Kia ora, and welcome to the Geographer in the Hallway series, where I, Katie Corson, talk to geographers and honorary geographers about their careers.
I'm Jim Sinner. I'm from Castleton, North Dakota originally. I now work at the Cawthron Institute in Nelson, New Zealand, where I'm a senior scientist and leading a team of social scientists. Most of my work entails investigations of the way that people get involved in policy and decisions about the management of the environment, both freshwater and coastal environments. That ranges from pure research to more practical applied work that might involve advising a government department or a regional council on how they might write policy to better involve people and their values in decision making about the environment. My current research project involves working with farmers and Maori leaders in 4 different case study catchments in New Zealand. And we are exploring how, if farmers work together in a catchment and really at local scales, what I call sub-catchment scales, and together with the Maori leaders in those catchments, whether that might be a better mechanism for achieving freshwater outcomes compared to targeting policy and regulations at individual landowners. So we're basically exploring how to get people working together and how to involve the tangata whenua in that process. A lot of research involves administration, so you have to deal with contracts and travel and arranging interviews and arranging consent forms and writing in various forms. That might be writing an email, that might be writing a summary of some notes, that might be writing a news story about some work we've been doing, it might be writing an academic paper, it might be writing a research report. There are times when I think that what I really am is a writer. I think it's a skill that is sometimes taken for granted or overlooked. I think it is one of the most important skills that people can have in a wide range of disciplines, because communication and clear communication is so important. It's a great quote, I think it's from Ogden Nash, that says, "The biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has occurred." I was in graduate school in Ithaca, New York at Cornell University, and I met a young woman from New Zealand. We finished our degrees and traveled around the world and decided we'd stop in New Zealand and see if we could get some work here. And 29 years later, we're still here. I studied political science and economics. And then I traveled in Africa because my interest in that at that point was in development studies. So I traveled in Africa and observed a lot of what was happening there. And I got a little bit disillusioned with the whole development enterprise. Although I was not quite at that point, I came back and enrolled in a master's program in agricultural economics. And at some point during the journey, I decided that I wouldn't do development studies. I would do more American agricultural policy. So my master's thesis in agricultural economics was dealing with American agricultural and trade policy. And I suppose during that time, as a postgrad student, and partly through the influence of my then girlfriend, later my wife, I got more interested in things environmental, through birds actually, and just got enthused about bird watching. At the conclusion of my master's degree, I went and worked for a US congressman in Washington, D.C. doing his legislative work. And that involved American farm policy, dealing with subsidies for wheat and barley and sugar and everything else, but also some legislation on environmental matters as they concerned agriculture, wetlands, and soil conservation in particular. So I got a bit involved in that area of work at that time, and got quite interested in environmental aspects of agriculture policy. When my wife and I then left the States and traveled around the world and ended up in New Zealand, I got a job at the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, as it was then, now Ministry of Primary Industries, and became a senior policy analyst working on agriculture and environment policy for the Ministry of Agriculture. Policy analyst, I suppose at its core, the role is to assess a problem, identify what options there might be for addressing that problem, and that will hopefully entail looking at what some of the root causes are of that, as well as some of the symptoms, devising some possible ways to address it, and coming up with some advice, hopefully involving collecting information and views of a wide range of people. It's important to get other points of view because other people will be looking at that problem from quite a different perspective. I eventually left government, did some private consulting, ended up at Cawthron Institute, eventually got a research grant during which I had a summer intern from Auckland Uni come and help me with the project, which I had a kind of an economic perspective on and gave this student this task. He happened to be a human geographer, this student, and he didn't really do the project the way that I wanted him to. He took quite a different, more critical perspective on the problem, without saying so in too many words. Basically showed me how my perspective on the problem was perhaps a bit narrow. In many ways, the whole exposure to critical geography has brought me back to my origins in studying political science, which I had in many ways kind of lost or forgotten about in my more economic trajectory. And I'm really enjoying it, looking at things more critically, asking deeper questions about people's relationship with the environment, with the economy, with each other, and thinking about how our social and political structures determine how we interact with the environment and how that shapes our world and who we are, and vice versa. So it's been a rather long, tortuous journey from a farm boy in North Dakota. I grew up in a farm family in North Dakota, working in the summers, driving the tractor with the wheat and the barley and the soybeans, to being a critical human geographer in Nelson, New Zealand. Yeah, that's my story. Don't be afraid to walk through a door and see what's on the other side. And remember that there are always more doors beyond that one. You never know where life's twists and turns will take you. Do the best job you can of the job you've got in front of you, and keep an open mind about what questions and assumptions are embedded in whatever line of inquiry you're pursuing. But don't feel trapped by where you are now. If you are feeling trapped, then look for another door.
Thank you for tuning in to the Geographer in the Hallway series. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up. And if you want to be notified when more videos are posted, click the subscribe button.